I'm joined by Jay Elsen and Alex Heinert, two of our FCS experts. Guys, we were talking the good, the bad, the ugly, but we're going in reverse order to get the not so great stuff out right away. And with that, you know, it pains me to say this, but we have to talk about the struggles for USD's offense, something Coyote fans aren't used to seeing in a while. And Jay, it's easy to just put the recent struggles under the offense umbrella, but it pretty much roots from a specific area.
Well, it does. I think, though, if you take a look at the broad picture in terms of total offense, it's probably the easiest measure here to just to understand how big of a struggle it's been. Last week, they had 243 yards of total offense in that loss to Youngstown State. That is actually the second lowest under Bob Nielsen against an FBS opponent. The lowest came actually earlier this year in the loss at Weber State. So generally, you know, there's been a lot of inconsistency there, but I think if you look to a couple of specific numbers, obviously there's one group within that group that gets a fair share of the blame, and that's the offensive line. USD, frankly, ranks dead last in the Valley in running the football. They're at 98.7 yards per game. They've also struggled to protect Austin Simmons, giving up a league-worst 23 sacks. So you put those two things together, and it's pretty easy to see why the offense has had a lot of ups and downs here this year.
All right, well, meanwhile, a team that has had great success in the run game, North Dakota, and Alex, the three-headed monster, Oliveira, Johansson, and Santiago, that's caused a lot of trouble for opposing teams. And it's like any given night, any one of those guys can go off. They all have similar but different skill sets. But that run game is kind of the key game within the game this weekend, with a huge matchup in Weber State coming to the Elsen Center. So how do they keep that ground game going against the Big Sky's leader in rush defense?
Yeah, talk about strength on strength, Kelly, in this matchup. North Dakota is coming off a performance where they rushed for 480 yards. 480 in one game against Sacramento State. That was just a handful of yards off the all-time school record. So they're brimming with confidence on the back of that performance. As you mentioned, Weber State, number 1 in the Big Sky, number 28 in the country in rush defense. They only allow about a 131 per contest on the ground. USD saw firsthand how good that rush defense is earlier this season. The only team that's really had any success running the football against Weber this year was Utah, who put up 260 against them in the season opener in Salt Lake City. But the thing was, even in that game against the Utes, who are a very good team in the Pac-12, 164 of that came on 3 plays. So Weber State's susceptible, just like any team is, to a big run play. And North Dakota's gotten pretty good at that. We saw last week James Johansson with a 90-yard touchdown run, Brady Oliveira with a 52-yard touchdown run. They had 6 runs of 30 yards or bigger last week. And granted, Sac State is not built to stop the run, of course. Nobody really in the Big Sky minus Southern Utah and Weber State really are anymore. But at least North Dakota has had success doing the thing that Weber State has had a tough time stopping, and that's getting into space and just outrunning guys to the pylon. They will not have John Santiago, though, this week, more than likely one of the fastest guys, of course, in that backfield.
All right, well, I was just going to ask you actually about the injury updates.
Segue, Kelly.
So, John Santiago, any other specific injury updates we should know about for the Fighting Hawks?
Yeah, unfortunately, John got banged up last week. He's been nursing a knee injury, then had an ankle injury this past week against the Hornets, and obviously that's a big blow. He's more or less week to week, and the team is hoping that he'll be back, of course, before the season wraps up. If you were watching that game against Sacramento State, you also saw that guys like Travis Toivonen, Noah Wanzik, and Izzy Adioti, basically the top 3 receivers on this team, all missed time in that game. And all 3, Wanzik is listed right now as being good to go 100%. Adioti might play, Toivonen might play, but there's some question marks about if those guys are going to be 100%. Elsewhere around the team, we know that UND has lost a couple of big play guys on defense with Zeke Ott and Tanner Palmberg, both missing now for the duration of the season with tough knee injuries. But the rest of their defensive core looks pretty good right now. They seem to be getting healthy across the board. Offensive line, again, an area that needs to be strong if they want to compete with Weber State this weekend. Did not have starting guard Ryan Tobin last week. He's coming back and is at least back on the 2 deep and has looked good in practice this week. So there's been a lot of shuffling to try and fill in the gaps. But the O-line obviously has done their job, even though they have not been at 100% really since week 1. They will, of course, be tested against the Weber State team that leads the country with 22 takeovers. But at least for the most part, they'll be close to full strength in the trenches for this game against the Wildcats.
That is important. Well, thank you so much, Alex. Alex is going to Vegas, so we are going to kick him out because he's got to go pack. I know, we're kind of jealous. But Jay, Tom and Bishan aren't able to be here, but we're still going to talk about North Dakota State and South Dakota State. Sure. And specifically, let's talk about NDSU first. are they untouchable? I mean, they seem like the team they're just going to roll to the national title once again. But at the same time, we saw South Dakota State give them a challenge in that Dakota Marker game. So what's the key if people are going to stop them? How do they do it?
Well, I don't know if there's any one key because it seems like whatever might go wrong. 1 week, this is a team that is so well coached that they're going to fix it and they're going to get it adjusted. And we've seen that play out because in that game against South Dakota State that you referenced, the Jackrabbits were able to run for 155 yards on the ground in that game, Kelly. Only one other team has managed to crack the 150 mark, and that came just last week against Illinois State, who has one of the better running backs in the country in James Robinson. So they did it that way. UNI is another team that gave the Bison a test, but they did it through the air. They threw for 362 yards in that game and had the Bison on upset alert going to the fourth quarter. And if not for a big fourth quarter, maybe NDSU comes into this game this weekend against South Dakota with one loss. But all I can say is, this is a team that if you get opportunities, if they make a mistake, you had better capitalize on it because more often than not, they're going to find a way to make up for that mistake in some other way, whether it's getting a turnover back after turning it over themselves or whether rolling up with a big fourth quarter like they did against UNI. So this is a team they make so precious few mistakes. You had better capitalize on those opportunities when and if they come.
Wow. Yeah, for sure. Oh my gosh, I was just like NDSU. But anyways, talking about South Dakota State, we saw how good they could be in the Dakota Marker game. Now they are facing Illinois State this weekend after losing to Northern Iowa. And the winner of this game will most likely get home field advantage in the playoffs. Loser won't. So
yeah, it's there's a lot riding on this game. Certainly at the Big Sky in the Big Sky Conference, one of the big games this weekend is that one that Alex just referenced in Weber State and UND. But in terms of the grand scheme of things, in terms of what this could mean for the FCS postseason picture, this one is either 1A or it's a very close second with Illinois State and South Dakota State. Now the Jackrabbits have not had a lot of success at Hancock Stadium there in Bloomington, and not a lot of teams have. Illinois State is very good at home. And SDSU does come into this game coming off a loss, as you mentioned, Kelly, and this is unfamiliar territory. It's been since 2015 since the Jackrabbits have lost back-to-back games. It's been since 2014 since the Jacks have lost consecutive games in the regular season. So a lot riding on this, and then the one thing that you have to keep in mind here, maybe the wild card for them, remember, they're playing a 10-game schedule, so that margin for error for South Dakota State is even more thin than it would be otherwise had they been able to play and maybe win that game against Iowa State to start the season.
All right. Exciting time of the year. Man, college football season is wrapping up, but good stuff, Jay. Thank you.